The judge burst into the courtroom, sobbing, and screamed, "Which one of you hurt my daughter?" Judge Eleanor Frost had been on the bench for 19 years, presiding over the most brutal cases in Franklin County with stone-faced composure. I'd argued before her dozens of times as a defense attorney, and I'd never seen her display anything beyond mild irritation or restrained satisfaction. Now, she stood in the doorway of courtroom 6 at 9:23 on a Friday morning, with mascara running down her face and her black robe hanging open over a wrinkled blouse. Her hands were shaking so violently that her wedding ring caught the fluorescent light in flashes. The bailiff, Raymond Garcia, moved toward her instinctively, but she pushed past him into the room where 30 people sat frozen in various states of confusion. My client, Devin Lattimore, was halfway through his arraignment on drug trafficking charges. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Nicole Brenner, had been mid-sentence when Judge Frost burst in. Now Brenner stood with her mouth open, papers forgotten, in her hands. Judge Frost's eyes swept the courtroom with wild desperation, landing on faces in the gallery, the jury box that was empty today, the defense table where I sat with Devin. "My daughter Chloe is in the hospital," Judge Frost said, her voice cracking. "Someone beat her so badly they fractured her skull. She's in surgery right now and the doctors don't know if she'll survive. She was found 2 hours ago in the parking garage across the street. Someone in this building did this to her, someone who knew she'd be here this morning because I told her to meet me at 9 wow." The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Garcia spoke into his radio, calling for additional security. Judge Frost pointed at the gallery with a trembling finger. "Chloe came to bring me coffee before my docket started. She texted me at 8:45 saying she was parking. She never made it to my chambers. Someone attacked her in that garage, and whoever did it knew exactly where she'd be and when." Nicole Brenner found her voice first. "Your Honor, we need to get you out of here. Let the police handle this." Judge Frost whirled on her with sudden fury. "The police? The same police who've been in and out of this courthouse all morning? The same officers who have access to my calendar and my chambers? Someone knew my daughter would be vulnerable in that garage. Someone planned this." She turned back to the courtroom. "Chloe has been helping me with a case that certain people don't want exposed. She's been doing research, gathering evidence, and 3 days ago she told me she'd found something that would bring down half the justice system in this county. I didn't believe her. I told her she was being paranoid. Now she's fighting for her life." My stomach dropped, because I knew exactly what case Judge Frost was talking about. 6 months ago, Chloe Frost had approached me at a legal conference. She was a third-year law student at the state university, brilliant and idealistic, working on an independent study about sentencing disparities in drug cases. She'd asked me questions about my clients, about patterns I'd noticed in how cases were prosecuted and plea deals were offered. I'd answered honestly, telling her what every defense attorney knew but couldn't prove, that the system was rigged, that certain defendants got harsher treatment while others walked with minimal consequences, and that the deciding factor seemed to be who you knew and how much you could pay. Chloe had thanked me and walked away, but I'd seen the determination in her eyes. She was going to dig deeper. Now Judge Frost was saying her daughter had found evidence of systemic corruption, and someone had tried to silence her permanently. Garcia approached Judge Frost again, his voice gentle but firm. "Ma'am, you need to let us secure the scene and start an investigation. You can't be here right now." Judge Frost's face crumpled, and she grabbed Garcia's arm. "She's my only child. She's 24 years old, and someone cracked her skull open in a parking garage at 8:50 in the morning because she was trying to expose corruption. Tell me which one of you did this. Tell me and I'll make sure you never see daylight again." The courtroom doors burst open and 3 police officers rushed in, followed by Captain Linda Yoshida from the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. Yoshida took in the scene instantly and moved toward Judge Frost with authority. "Eleanor, I just heard. We've got units securing the parking garage and detectives en route to the hospital. We're going to find who did this." Judge Frost pulled away from Garcia and faced Yoshida. "Linda, Chloe told me 3 days ago that she had evidence of prosecutors taking bribes to reduce charges, of judges receiving payments to influence sentencing, of defense attorneys colluding with the DA's office to ensure convictions for specific defendants while protecting others. She said it went all the way to the top, that people I've worked with for years are involved. I didn't want to believe her, but now someone tried to kill her to keep her quiet." Yoshida's expression remained carefully neutral, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "We'll investigate everything. Right now, I need you to come with me. We need to secure Chloe's research and make sure you're protected." Judge Frost shook her head violently. "Protected? From whom? From the officers in this building? From the prosecutors I trust? From the defense attorneys who've argued before me? Any one of them could be involved." She pointed at me suddenly, and I felt every eye in the room swing toward me. "You, Nathaniel Rivers. Chloe talked to you 6 months ago at the legal conference. What did you tell her?" I stood slowly, keeping my hands visible. "She asked me about sentencing patterns in drug cases. I told her what I'd observed, that outcomes seemed influenced by factors beyond the evidence. She was doing research for a class project. I didn't know she'd take it further." Judge Frost's eyes narrowed. "What factors? Be specific." I glanced at Nicole Brenner, who was watching me with barely concealed hostility. My client Devin was staring at the table, probably wondering if his case was about to get even more complicated. I took a breath and committed. Defendants with connections to certain law firms get better deals. Defendants whose families can pay significant legal fees often see charges reduced or dropped. Meanwhile, defendants who rely on public defenders or court-appointed attorneys get the maximum penalties regardless of circumstances. I've been practicing for 12 years, and the pattern is undeniable. Nicole Brenner exploded. That's a serious accusation. You're claiming the DA's office is corrupt based on what? Your biased observations? You're a defense attorney. Of course you think the system is rigged against your clients. I turned to her. I'm saying outcomes are inconsistent in ways that can't be explained by evidence alone. Some defendants walk on trafficking charges with minimal evidence against them. Others get maximum sentences with weak cases. The deciding factor isn't guilt or innocence. It's who they know and what they can afford. Brenner's face flushed red. You're making accusations you can't prove in front of a judge and law enforcement. That's slander. Judge Frost cut her off. Nicole, shut up. I want to hear this. She looked back at me. Chloe mentioned specific cases in her research. Cases where the outcomes didn't match the evidence. Did she ask you about any particular defendants? I thought back to our conversation 6 months ago. Chloe had mentioned several cases by number, asking if I remembered the details. Most had blurred together, but one stood out. She asked about State v. Keller. Christopher Keller charged with distribution of heroin, approximately $200,000 worth. Solid evidence, reliable witnesses, forensics tying him to the drugs. He was represented by the Hartman and Associates firm, very expensive, very connected. The case was prosecuted by your office, Nicole. Keller walked with probation and community service, despite it being his third offense. Meanwhile, my client, Teresa Gomez, got 15 years for possession, with intent to distribute. First offense, weak evidence. Both cases tried within 3 months of each other. Judge Frost's expression went very still. I presided over the Keller case. The plea deal was presented as a fait accompli. Both sides agreed to the terms before it reached my courtroom. I questioned it at the time, but the prosecution insisted they had evidentiary concerns that made the deal necessary. She turned to Brenner. Nicole, you worked the Keller case. Explain the evidentiary concerns. Brenner's composure was cracking. I'd have to review the file. It was months ago. There were chain of custody issues, I believe. Judge Frost's voice dropped to something dangerous. There were no chain of custody issues. I read the entire file. The evidence was airtight. So why did Christopher Keller walk when he should have gotten 20 years? The courtroom was dead silent. Everyone understood we'd just crossed from a judge's personal tragedy into an active corruption investigation playing out in real time. Captain Yoshida stepped forward. Eleanor, this needs to happen in a formal investigation, not in open court. Judge Frost ignored her. Chloe found something 3 days ago. She called me excited, said she'd gotten access to sealed financial records showing payments between defense firms and the prosecutor's office. She said the money was being disguised as consultation fees and expert witness payments, but the amounts were too large and too frequent to be legitimate. She was going to show me the evidence this morning. Instead, someone put her in the hospital. She looked around the courtroom again. So I'm asking one more time. Which one of you did this? Which one of you tried to kill my daughter to protect a corruption scheme? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. Check Chloe's cloud storage. She gave you access 6 months ago. Password is JusticeBlind24. She knew this might happen. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I showed the phone to Judge Frost, who read the message and went pale. Who sent that? I don't know. The number isn't saved. Captain Yoshida took my phone. We'll trace it. In the meantime, if Chloe gave you access to her research, we need to secure it immediately. I pulled out my laptop and opened a browser, while Yoshida, Judge Frost, and several officers crowded around me. The defense table was designed for attorney-client privilege, but that concept felt irrelevant now. I navigated to a cloud storage site and entered the credentials from the text. The account opened, showing dozens of folders labeled by case number and date. Judge Frost pointed at one labeled Master Document, Evidence of Systematic Corruption. I clicked it open and found a 200-page document that looked more like a federal investigation report than a student project. Chloe had documented 3 years of cases with detailed analysis of charges, plea deals, sentencing outcomes, and financial transactions. She'd cross-referenced public court records with leaked financial documents showing payments between law firms and the DA's office. The pattern was damning. Defense firms that paid substantial consulting fees to prosecutors saw their clients get favorable treatment. Firms that didn't pay saw their clients get crushed. The document included bank records, email exchanges, and recorded phone conversations where deals were explicitly discussed. At the bottom of the master document was a list of names. 17 prosecutors, 8 judges, and 12 defense attorneys identified as active participants in the scheme. I scanned the list and felt sick. I recognized most of the names. These were people I worked with regularly, people I'd respected. Judge Frost's name wasn't on the list, but 3 other judges from Franklin County were. Nicole Brenner's name was there, along with her supervisor, Chief Deputy D.A. Richard Hollis. And at the very top of the defense attorney list was a name that made my blood run cold, Martin Hartman, senior partner at Hartman and Associates, the firm that had represented Christopher Keller. Martin Hartman was also the president of the Franklin County Bar Association and a former federal prosecutor with a reputation for integrity. Judge Frost read over my shoulder and made a sound of anguish. Martin Hartman? I've known him for 20 years. We served on ethics committees together. He taught legal ethics at the law school where Chloe was studying. Captain Yoshida was already on her radio, calling for backup and issuing orders. I need units to secure Hartman and Associates in the DA's office. Nobody leaves. Get search warrants for financial records and communications. And someone get a protective detail to the hospital where Chloe Frost is in surgery. She's a witness in a major corruption case. Judge Frost grabbed my arm. Keep reading. Tell me everything Chloe found. I scrolled through the document, reading sections aloud. She documented over 120 cases where outcomes were influenced by financial payments. She tracked the money through shell companies and consulting agreements, but the pattern was clear. Defendants who paid got deals. Defendants who couldn't pay got destroyed. The total amount of money involved is over $4 million in the past 3 years alone. I clicked on another folder labeled Recordings and found audio files dated over several months. I played one at random. Martin Hartman's voice came through clearly. The Keller case needs to disappear. His family has paid $150,000 to make this go away. I need you to lose the evidence report and offer probation. No trial, no publicity. A second voice, which I recognized as Richard Hollis from the DA's office, responded. That's a heavy lift. Keller's looking at serious time. We'd need a compelling reason to drop it. Hartman's laugh was cold. The compelling reason is $150,000 and the understanding that your son's legal troubles in college will disappear. I believe he's facing expulsion for academic fraud. Would be a shame if that became a criminal matter. Hollis's hesitation was audible. You're saying my son's case goes away if I handle Keller? I'm saying cooperation is rewarded. Always has been. You're not the first prosecutor I've worked with, and you won't be the last. The recording ended. Judge Frost's face had gone from grief-stricken to something harder and colder. Chloe recorded this conversation? How? I clicked on the file details. The metadata says it was recorded 4 months ago at the Capitol Grill downtown. Chloe must have been there, either coincidentally or by design. She recorded dozens of these conversations. I played another file. This one featured a different voice, someone I didn't immediately recognize, discussing a homicide case. The witness is problematic. She saw everything and she's credible. We need her to recant or disappear. A second voice, this one belonging to a judge named Theodore Finch, responded calmly. I can ensure she's declared incompetent if she testifies. Mental health concerns, traumatic stress making her unreliable. The defense will eat it up, and the jury will discount her testimony completely. The first voice again. In exchange for? Judge Finch. The usual arrangement, $30,000 to my consulting firm and favorable rulings on my nephew's DUI case next month. The recording continued with explicit discussion of how to destroy a witness's credibility to protect a guilty defendant whose family had paid for protection. When it ended, Captain Yoshida looked genuinely shaken. This is enough to bring RICO charges against everyone involved. We're not talking about isolated incidents. This is organized criminal enterprise operating inside the justice system. Judge Frost pulled out her phone and started making calls. I'm contacting the state attorney general and the FBI. This is beyond local jurisdiction. We need federal investigators here immediately. She paused, her voice breaking. And I need to know if one of these people tried to kill Chloe to stop this from coming out. My unknown contact texted again. Check the file labeled Recent Activity. Chloe was tracking who accessed her research. She knew someone was following her work. I navigated to the folder and found a log of IP addresses and access timestamps. Chloe had set up monitoring on her research files, tracking every time someone viewed or downloaded her documents. The log showed multiple unauthorized access attempts over the past 2 weeks, all from IP addresses associated with the Franklin County Courthouse and the district attorney's office. Someone had been tracking Chloe's investigation, watching her compile evidence, waiting for the right moment to silence her. The most recent access was logged at 8:30 this morning, 15 minutes before Chloe was attacked. The IP address belonged to a computer in the courthouse's secure evidence room, a location that required keycard access limited to law enforcement and prosecutors. Captain Yoshida traced the access log. That terminal requires authenticated login. We can identify exactly who accessed these files. She made another call, speaking urgently to someone about pulling security footage and computer logs. Judge Frost was pacing now, her earlier breakdown replaced by focused rage. Chloe knew she was being watched. She kept investigating anyway. She must have known the danger she was in. She looked at me. Why did she give you access to her files? Why trust you specifically? I thought about my brief conversation with Chloe 6 months ago, trying to remember if I'd said anything that would justify this level of trust. I told her the truth, about what I'd observed. I didn't try to defend the system or make excuses. Maybe that was enough. Or maybe she gave access to multiple people as insurance, making sure the evidence would survive even if she didn't. The courtroom doors opened again, and a tall man in a federal agent's jacket entered, followed by 3 more agents. He identified himself as Special Agent David Rourke from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. We received a call from Attorney General's office about a federal investigation into judicial corruption. Someone want to brief me? Judge Frost pointed at my laptop. My daughter uncovered a criminal conspiracy involving prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys who've been selling justice for the past 3 years. She documented everything. This morning, someone tried to kill her to stop this evidence from going public. The attempt occurred in the parking garage across from this courthouse at approximately 8:50 a.m. She's currently in surgery with a fractured skull. Agent Rourke's expression remained professional, but his eyes sharpened. Show me what you have. For the next 20 minutes, I walked Agent Rourke through Chloe's research while his team photographed the screen and documented everything. When I played the recordings, Rourke stopped me repeatedly to clarify voices and details. By the time we finished the preliminary review, he'd made multiple calls and 6 more FBI agents had arrived. This is one of the most comprehensive corruption cases I've seen, Rourke said. Your daughter built a federal case from scratch using publicly available records and covert recordings. She documented predicate acts, established patterns of criminal enterprise, and identified specific conspirators. This is RICO prosecution quality work. Judge Frost's voice was hoarse. She's a law student. She did this as a class project that turned into something else when she realized how deep the corruption went. Agent Rourke pulled up the list of names again. These individuals represent a significant portion of Franklin County's legal system. Taking them down simultaneously will require coordination with multiple agencies. He looked at Captain Yoshida. I'm assuming command of this investigation as a federal matter. I need your full cooperation, and I need to know if any of your officers are compromised. Yoshida bristled, but nodded. My department has been peripheral to the courts. We handle transport and security, but don't get involved in case outcomes. I'd stake my reputation that my people are clean, but I'll cooperate fully with your investigation. Rourke turned to Nicole Brenner, who'd been sitting silently at the prosecution table during all of this. Ms. Brenner, your name appears on the evidence list. You're currently under investigation for accepting bribes to influence case outcomes. I'm going to have to ask you to surrender your credentials and remain available for questioning. Brenner's face went white. I want a lawyer. You're right. Agent Morrison will escort you to a secure location where you can contact counsel. Brenner stood on shaking legs as a female FBI agent guided her out of the courtroom. My client, Devin Lattimore, who'd been forgotten during all of this, spoke up quietly. Does this mean my case is compromised? I looked at him, then at Agent Rourke. That's an excellent question. If the prosecutor handling your case is under investigation for corruption, and if the judge who would preside over your trial is potentially compromised, then yes, your case is tainted. Rourke nodded slowly. We'll be reviewing every active case in this jurisdiction. Any case touched by a person under investigation will be examined for irregularities. Depending on what we find, charges may be dismissed or cases may need to be retried. Devin's eyes widened with hope for the first time since his arrest. Judge Frost's phone rang, and she answered immediately. Yes? How is she? Her face transformed, relief flooding through the tears. She's out of surgery? She's stable? Can I see her? She listened for another moment, then ended the call. Chloe made it through surgery. The doctors say she has a good chance of recovery. They're moving her to ICU. The relief in the courtroom was palpable, but Agent Rourke remained focused. Judge Frost, your daughter is a crucial witness now. We need her protected around the clock. I'm assigning agents to the hospital immediately. He turned to his team. I want surveillance on everyone named in this research. Phone records, financial records, travel records, everything. We move fast before people start destroying evidence. Captain Yoshida's radio crackled. Captain, we have results from the security footage and computer logs. The evidence room terminal that accessed the files this morning was logged to Sergeant Daniel Kruger. He's currently not on premises. Yoshida's face darkened. Kruger is one of my senior officers. He's been with the department for 16 years. She looked at Rourke. If he's involved, this goes deeper than the attorneys and judges. We might have law enforcement actively participating. Agent Rourke issued rapid orders. I want Kruger located and brought in. Put out a bolo, but approach with caution. If he attempted murder this morning, he's dangerous. My phone buzzed again. The unknown contact. Kruger didn't act alone. Check file enforcement connection. Chloe tracked police involvement too. I opened the new folder and found documentation of law enforcement officers who'd been paid to lose evidence, falsify reports, and intimidate witnesses. Sergeant Daniel Kruger was listed along with 5 other officers from various departments. The file included bank records showing payments from Martin Hartman's firm to the officers through shell companies. Chloe had tracked the money meticulously, connecting every payment to a specific case where evidence had disappeared or witnesses had recanted. One case stood out, State v. Angela Ramirez, charged with possession with intent to distribute. The file showed that Ramirez's boyfriend was actually the dealer, but he'd paid Kruger $25,000 to plant evidence on Ramirez instead. She'd been convicted and was currently serving 12 years. I showed this to Agent Rourke, whose expression went from professional focus to genuine anger. They framed an innocent woman to protect a paying client. How many other cases in here involve planted evidence or falsified reports? I scrolled through the enforcement folder. Chloe documented 23 cases where officers were paid to manipulate evidence. Some involved planting drugs, others involved losing exculpatory evidence. A few involved threatening witnesses into silence. The total paid to law enforcement was over $600,000. Judge Frost grabbed the laptop and read through the cases herself. With each one, her face grew more horrified. I presided over 9 of these cases. 9 times I convicted someone based on evidence that was manufactured or testimony that was coerced. How many innocent people are in prison because I trusted a corrupt system? Agent Rourke's voice was firm. Judge Frost, you were deceived by people who exploited your trust. The guilt lies with them, not you. But we will need to review every case you presided over to identify potential wrongful convictions. My unknown contact texted again. Final file, The Architect. This is who orchestrated everything. I opened the file labeled The Architect and found a dossier on Martin Hartman that went back 15 years. Chloe had traced the corruption scheme to its origins, showing how Hartman had built the network systematically after leaving federal prosecution. He'd started small, offering favorable treatment to a few wealthy clients in exchange for substantial fees. When that proved successful and undetected, he'd expanded, recruiting prosecutors through blackmail and bribes, compromising judges through financial incentives, and hiring law enforcement to handle evidence manipulation. The scheme had grown to involve dozens of people across the justice system, generating millions in illegal revenue. But the most damning part of the dossier was a section labeled Elimination Protocol. Chloe had found communications showing that Hartman maintained a list of potential threats to the operation. Anyone who asked too many questions or showed signs of investigation was targeted for intimidation or removal. 3 people had died in the past 2 years in accidents that Chloe's research suggested were murders. A court reporter who'd mentioned inconsistencies in transcripts, a paralegal who'd questioned billing practices, and a journalist who'd been investigating sentencing disparities. Chloe's name had been added to the list 3 days ago, right after she'd accessed sealed financial records that directly implicated Hartman. The file included a final note from Chloe dated yesterday. If you're reading this, something happened to me. Martin Hartman knows I have evidence against him, and he's planning to silence me. I've been careful, but I know I'm running out of time. Please make sure this evidence reaches people who can act on it. Don't let them bury this. Don't let the victims suffer for nothing. Agent Rourke read the note and immediately pulled out his phone. I need tactical teams to Martin Hartman's office and residence immediately. Consider him armed and dangerous. He's wanted for conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice. Judge Frost was reading the Elimination Protocol section, her hands shaking. 3 people are dead. 3 people Hartman had killed because they threatened his operation, and he tried to make Chloe the 4th. She looked up at Rourke. I want to be there when you arrest him. I want to see his face when he realizes everything is over. Rourke shook his head. You're too emotionally involved. Let my team handle the arrest. You should be at the hospital with your daughter. Judge Frost stood up, her voice steel. My daughter nearly died exposing this corruption. I'm not going to hide in a hospital room while the man who tried to kill her gets arrested. I'm coming with you. Rourke studied her for a moment, then nodded. You can observe from a command vehicle, but you stay out of the tactical operation. Understood? Understood. We moved as a group out of the courtroom and into a convoy of federal vehicles. I rode with Agent Rourke, still carrying my laptop with Chloe's research. Captain Yoshida came too, along with several officers she trusted absolutely. The drive to Hartman & Associates took 12 minutes through downtown Franklin. The firm occupied the top 3 floors of a modern glass tower with commanding views of the city. When we arrived, FBI tactical teams were already in position around the building. Rourke coordinated with his team leaders through radio, confirming that all exits were covered and building security had been secured. Judge Frost and I watched from inside a mobile command vehicle parked across the street. Surveillance feeds showed the interior of Hartman's office where the lawyer sat at his desk, apparently conducting business as usual. Does he know we're coming? Judge Frost asked. Rourke shook his head. We've been monitoring his communications. No indication he's aware of the investigation yet. The attack on your daughter was supposed to eliminate the threat before anyone saw the evidence. He thinks he's safe. At 11:15 a.m., tactical teams entered the building. We watched on surveillance as they moved through the floors, securing each level and detaining staff for questioning. When they reached Hartman's office, 6 agents entered with weapons drawn. Hartman looked up from his desk, startled, but not panicked. His voice came through clearly on the audio feed. What's the meaning of this? I'm in the middle of client work. The lead agent identified himself. Martin Hartman, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and corruption of public officials. Stand up slowly and put your hands behind your back. Hartman's expression shifted from confusion to calculation. You're making a serious mistake. I'm a former federal prosecutor and the president of the Bar Association. Whatever you think you have on me won't hold up. I suggest you call your supervisor before you ruin your career. The agent smiled coldly. My supervisor is Special Agent David Rourke, and he's the one who sent me. We have 3 years of evidence, including recordings of you arranging bribes, manipulating cases, and ordering the murder of 3 people who threatened your operation. This morning you tried to kill a law student named Chloe Frost because she documented all of it. She survived, and your entire network is being rolled up as we speak. Hartman's face went pale. For the first time, fear showed through his composure. I want my lawyer. You'll get one. Right now. You're coming with us." They cuffed Hartman and led him out of the office. Judge Frost watched with grim satisfaction. "How long before he starts talking?" Rourke checked his phone. "We've arrested 12 people in the past hour. Someone will break soon, probably one of the junior prosecutors who has less to lose. Once one talks, they'll all scramble to make deals." Over the next 6 hours, the FBI executed synchronized arrests across Franklin County. Prosecutors were taken into custody at the courthouse, judges were arrested at their homes, defense attorneys were detained at their offices, law enforcement officers, including Sergeant Daniel Kruger, were found and arrested without incident. By 5 p.m., 34 people were in federal custody, all charged with various counts related to the corruption scheme. The local news had picked up the story, and helicopters circled downtown, broadcasting the unprecedented mass arrests of justice system officials. I sat in an FBI conference room giving a detailed statement about my conversation with Chloe 6 months ago, and everything I'd observed during my years of practice. Other defense attorneys who'd noticed irregularities were being interviewed as well, their suspicions finally validated by hard evidence. Judge Frost spent most of the afternoon at the hospital with Chloe, who'd regained consciousness briefly before being sedated again for healing. The doctors said her prognosis was good, that the surgery had relieved pressure on her brain, and she'd likely make a full recovery. When Judge Frost returned to the FBI office at 7 p.m., she looked exhausted, but determined. Chloe woke up long enough to ask if the evidence got out. I told her yes, that everyone was being arrested. She smiled and said good, it was worth it, then fell back asleep. Rourke showed us the preliminary results from the interrogations. 2 prosecutors and 1 defense attorney had already agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. They were providing details about how the scheme operated, confirming everything in Chloe's research and adding new information about cases she hadn't documented. "We're looking at over 200 compromised cases at minimum," Rourke said. "Every case these individuals touched will need to be reviewed. Innocent people will be exonerated, guilty people who bought their freedom will be recharged, and the entire justice system in Franklin County will need to be rebuilt from scratch." Judge Frost nodded slowly. "How do we begin to fix this? How do we restore any trust in the courts after this?" Rourke's expression was serious. "Transparency and accountability. We prosecute everyone involved publicly and thoroughly. We review every case and make corrections where justice was denied. We implement oversight systems to prevent this from happening again. It will take years, but it's the only way forward." He looked at me. "Mr. Rivers, you're going to be a key witness in multiple trials. I hope you're prepared for that." I thought about my career, about whether I could continue practicing in Franklin County after being so publicly involved in exposing corruption. "I'm prepared to do whatever's necessary. Too many people have been hurt by this system. If my testimony helps fix it, that's what I'll do." The unknown contact texted me one final time. "Thank you for helping Chloe's evidence reach the right people. She trusted you for a reason. Keep fighting for justice." I replied, "Who are you?" The response came immediately. "Someone who cares about the same things you do. Someone who watched this corruption destroy lives and finally found a way to stop it. That's all you need to know." The number went dead after that, becoming unreachable. I suspected it was another law enforcement officer or court employee who'd been gathering evidence alongside Chloe, someone who couldn't come forward publicly, but had helped orchestrate everything from the shadows. Over the following months, the trials proceeded with overwhelming evidence. Martin Hartman was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. 14 prosecutors, 5 judges, 8 defense attorneys, and 6 law enforcement officers received sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. The DA's office was effectively dismantled and rebuilt with new leadership from outside the county. A special master was appointed to review all cases from the previous 5 years, identifying 187 potentially wrongful convictions and 93 cases where guilty defendants had escaped justice through corruption. Many of those cases were reopened and retried. Innocent people were released from prison. Angela Ramirez, the woman who'd been framed by Sergeant Kruger, was exonerated and released after serving 4 years. She filed a civil suit and received a $12 million settlement from the county. My client, Devin Lattimore, had his charges dismissed when it was discovered that the prosecutor had manufactured evidence to strengthen a weak case. He walked free and eventually started a non-profit helping other people navigate the justice system. Judge Eleanor Frost retired from the bench, saying she could no longer trust her own judgment after being deceived for so long. She joined the state attorney general's office as a special prosecutor focusing on public corruption cases. Chloe Frost recovered fully from her injuries. She graduated law school with honors and took a position with the FBI's public corruption unit. Her thesis on judicial corruption became required reading in law schools across the country. 2 years after everything, I ran into Chloe at a legal conference. She was presenting on methods for detecting institutional corruption, using her research as a case study. After her presentation, we got coffee and caught up. "I never properly thanked you," Chloe said. "If you hadn't been there that day to access my research, everything might have been buried. Hartman might have succeeded in killing me and destroying the evidence." I shook my head. "You did all the work. You built the case and made sure it would survive even if you didn't. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." Chloe smiled. You told me 6 months before everything happened that the system was rigged, but that good lawyers kept fighting anyway. That stayed with me. It reminded me that individual integrity matters even when institutions are corrupt. That's why I trusted you with the evidence. We talked for another hour about the state of the justice system, about whether the reforms had been effective, about how to prevent corruption from taking root again. Chloe was optimistic in a cautious way, believing that transparency and accountability could work if people remained vigilant. As we parted ways, she said something that stayed with me. My mother asked me once if it was worth it, if nearly dying to expose corruption was worth the cost. I told her yes, because silence is complicity. When you see injustice and do nothing, you're part of the problem. Someone has to be willing to speak up, even when it's dangerous. 3 years after Judge Frost burst into that courtroom sobbing and screaming about her daughter, the Franklin County justice system had been rebuilt with new leadership, stronger oversight, and institutional memory of what happened when corruption went unchecked. The attorneys, judges, and officers who'd sold justice were serving their sentences. The victims of their corruption had been acknowledged and, where possible, compensated. And Chloe Frost continued fighting for transparency and accountability, turning her near-death experience into a mission to prevent others from suffering the same injustice. I think about that Friday morning often, about how quickly a system can collapse when someone shines light on the truth, about how one person's courage can expose corruption that everyone knew existed, but nobody had the evidence to prove. Chloe's research didn't just bring down criminals. It reminded everyone that justice requires constant vigilance, that institutions are only as honest as the people within them, and that speaking truth to power is always worth the risk. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.